Hello, friends. So today we're going to be talking about whether or not you can know things with facts, logic, and reason. And, well, honestly, I don't think you can. So we're going to examine a couple of scenarios. First, I'm going to assume you are an atheist who believes in the scientific method is a way of knowing things. So in the scientific method, you come up with a hypothesis, something that seems kind of reasonable. You try and think of a way to disprove that hypothesis, and you run that test, and then you fail to falsify, you fail to disprove the hypothesis. And you try and run as many tests as possible, and you have as many people do it as possible to replicate the results. And after you fail to falsify the hypothesis enough, you elevate it to the level of a theory. So obviously there's no certain knowledge there. It's kind of a problem of induction. A lot of people frame it like, how do you know the sun will rise tomorrow? You don't. You assume it will because every other day of your life the sun has risen, so of course it will rise tomorrow, but we don't know with any complete certainty. So for a lot of you, that's probably gonna seem like a weak claim. So I'm gonna try and make a little bit of a stronger claim here as well. The human mind is set up to understand things in a very specific way. One of the basic examples of this is the law of non-contradiction. Something can't be A and not be A at the same time. And imagine if the universe weren't set up that way, if it weren't set up in a way for it to be conceivable by a human mind. That seems like it would be kind of problematic for us having certain knowledge of anything. And I think the deeper we get into physics, the more we kind of run into these problems with like quantum mechanics, where we have these tests and we have to find a way of interpreting them. Okay, next I'm going to assume you are a theist who, whether or not you believe in the scientific method, believes you can prove God through reason. We're going to start off with Anselm. I don't know why people like to start off with Anselm. People love to make fun of poor Anselm. I mean, I think he does deserve to be made fun of, but that's besides the point. And so basically Anselm said, imagine the most perfect thing. Wouldn't it be more perfect if it were true, if it were real? Therefore it must be real. But also, you can't imagine the most perfect thing, so there must be something even more perfect than what you can imagine, and that thing is God. Also, if you say you're an atheist, you're disputing such a self-evident fact as God in such a way that you are saying something that has no meaning. So basically, Anselm thought that saying you're an atheist was equivalent to trying to say you were imagining a three-sided square. It just, to him, it seemed completely contradictory. But his argument doesn't really seem sound to me in any particular way. Just imagine the most perfect thing. It would be more perfect if it were real, therefore it must be real. There are like so many flaws in this. Like he's assuming that perfect is a thing, that things can be, that has some meaning. So next up we have Thomas Aquinas, who just kind of read Maimonides and Averroes and was like, yeah, so let's apply Aristotle to Catholicism. Except he had to take a couple of extra steps, because in Catholicism you also have to prove that the Trinity is real, not just the existence of God. And so he has the five proofs, which likewise have these kind of strange assumptions like, oh, infinite regression is absurd, or once again, that good is an actual thing that you can be. And so then we move along into history until we get to an interesting place of Descartes, who decided he was going to doubt everything. And then was like, yeah, I think Anselm was kind of right about it. So basically, he tries to doubt everything. And the only thing he couldn't doubt was that he was doubting. And he realized he was doubting, so that must mean he existed. This is where you get cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Originally it's cogito sum, I think I am. And so he thought because he was doubting, that meant he was imperfect. And so that meant that there was this perfect being, and that there was this God, and he kind of builds up his epistemology from there. It's a very kind of strange epistemology. No one really kind of talks about it after his proof of God, but he's basically at a point where, like, he thinks that mathematical proofs of triangles are more valid or more certain than his actual sensory experience of other people and their existence, which I always just find really interesting. So basically, Descartes has this belief that if you understand something clearly and distinctly, it's true. So a mathematical proof would be a good example of this. If you could prove, the Pythagorean theorem, for instance, that's true if you understand it clearly and distinctly. And so someone asked, what if God is a deceptive God? What if that disproves, what you think, has proven the existence of God? And so he gives what I think is kind of a cop-out answer, where is that maybe God is a deceptive God, but, while we are understanding the thing clearly and distinctly, we aren't deceived, which seems to kind of be missing the point. Leibniz came back a bit later and tried to defend the point a little bit further. So Leibniz basically admits that you have to come up with a clear and distinct notion of God that would exist in such a way as to be a truthful God, as to be a God that wouldn't create you in a deceitful manner. And he says that his opposition would say, I would say, that we can't know this God until we have a clear notion, and we can't have a clear notion of this God until we know him. Therefore, we can't know him. And he kind of denies this on the basis that we can have clear notions, clear and distinct notions, because of triangles, because we know that a triangle has 180 degrees. We have that clear notion, we can run through a mathematical proof, and prove this is a triangle, 180 degrees in its angles. The problem with this is it does seem to be ignoring the possibility that we don't know if the triangle has 180 degrees. What if there was some kind of fault in our reasoning that led us to come up to this faulty conclusion? And B, mathematically speaking, that's not really an objective truth in the way I think they thought of it before. Euclid, who set out with his definitions and his assumptions, and people kind of expanded on that. They realized, some of his proofs weren't completely valid, so they added in an assumption or something like that. They tweaked his proofs, they added on, they added algebra, obviously. And then about a century ago, someone was like, yeah, so what if we don't understand parallel lines? Euclid has this postulate about parallel lines, and if you tweak it a little bit, you get triangles with fewer than 180 degrees, or triangles with more than 180 degrees. And these are perfectly valid mathematical ideas, perfectly valid mathematical systems that you can use. So I think Leibniz and Descartes, those thinkers, were kind of thinking of math as a more singularly objective thing than it really is. And I think that kind of led them astray in their thinking. And they really couldn't, I think, fully imagine the consequences of having a deceitful God, the kind of God that would creator, that would lead us to misunderstand the universe. And personally, I think I always have problems with this because, I've seen people who have hallucinations. And so I think if Jesus ever came to me and personally said, Liam, I'm your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, you should convert to Christianity, I don't think it would be the logical course of action to be 100% certain in the existence of Jesus Christ. Because I've met people who say they have talked to Jesus Christ. I think those people are seeing things that aren't there. I've dreamt things that I know weren't there. I dreamt there was a zombie apocalypse last night. obviously it's not the case. I don't believe that, so I can't have any certainty in my sense perception. I don't think there's any way around that. I don't think it's even just sense perception. I think even in our most when we consider this kind of deceitful creation, I think it really does cast doubt on even the most fundamental and logical of our proofs and considerations of existence. So I think the last question is just kind of, where does this leave us? If we can't know anything, what do we do? And in answer to this, honestly, I'm going to have to look to Descartes again, who compared the mind to a city and said that most people, they grow up with these prejudices. And because he'd never doubted them, and they just kind of came from here and there, it was an unplanned city. But he thought a centralized city would be better built. So he described it as raising the city of his mind. And he said, well, of course, you live in your mind, and you can't just get rid of your home completely. You need to live somewhere. And so he said he was going to take the cultural ideals with which he was raised, and he was going to think of them as a kind of tent in which he was living while he was in the process of doubting. And honestly, I think that's why he continued to be Christian, because nothing in his logical proof really points in any way that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and the Messiah and Savior of all of humanity, and that Muhammad, for instance, is the great prophet, or the Sikhs aren't right, or the Hindus, maybe Brahman is his God, right? It really seemed to me like for him Christianity was kind of an arbitrary choice. That's what I think I kind of do. I'm not Christian, but I think I kind of pretend like the things that seem true to me are true. This is going to be a familiar cognitive dissonance, I think, to a lot of people who don't believe that you have free will, that you make your own decisions, and that it's just materialistic cause and effect. So if you believe this, obviously, you don't, on one level, you don't think you make your own decisions. On the other hand, you have to, carry the weight of making your own decisions, because that's how you experience it, even if it's separate from your actual intellectual reality. And I think another way out is presented to us by Thomas Aquinas, who gives an account of kind of two lights of knowledge, both of which come from God. There's the natural light of revelation, of nature, of reason, and there's a superadded divine light of revelation, of faith, given by God to some people. And I think if you really have faith in a particular God, and you say that's the basis of your knowledge, not reason, you can kind of maintain this idea that we know things.